Hey, hello, hi, welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about a arc that I got to read recently. It's going to be a little disorganized, and I apologize for that. That's a skill that I seem to have lost in the last few years, which is bizarre because at work, it's like I shifted all of my organizational skills from being able to apply it to my personal life to only exclusively being able to apply it to my working life. And I'm like, really doing a good job up there, but I'm not doing such a good job at doing it at home. Anyway, teehee, if you are ready, buckle in. Okay, so I'm going to be talking about A Road of Shadows and Crows. This is not the first novel that Viola Nichols has written and published, but this is the most recent one. It has been independently published. It has been described as a Robin Hood meets Guild, or a Tramantasy. There's a handful of tropes that were used to advertise it. Toucher and die, he's morally gray, class divide, anxiety representation, bonded magic, she's on the run, Tramantasy, enemies to lovers, found family, and slow burn. I think it ticks off. I think it ticks pretty much all of these boxes. I'm not super sure if I agree with the enemies to lovers, or at least it just didn't feel quite like fully enemies, or maybe it was because it just wasn't super, it didn't last a super long time. Anyway, the description: a noble woman fleeing violence, a band of rebels opposing the monarchy, an unlikely romance, and a secret that could unravel the world. Plucked from obscurity to live an easy life as the princess's companion, my place in the castle has always been certain. That is, until the sadistic prince claims me for his own and danger closes in around me. In a fit of fear, I abandon everything and sneak into the back of a carriage of a handsome stranger. I find myself among a band of rebels plotting to dismantle our sacred hierarchies. I'm lonely and afraid, and though Reggie, the leader of the band, despises nobles like me, he is the first person who believes I am someone special. As the truth comes hurtling at me, I must decide between throwing my lot in with Reggie and the band of rebels, or returning to a life of comfort and ease. But the ruthless king has his secrets and will hunt us to the ends of the kingdom to stop the rebels and drag me back to the castle. In this fantastical world steeped in lore, a rigid social structure, slow burn, steamy romance, and adventure, Raven's journey of self-discovery will grip you from the moment you enter the kingdom of Valia. Yes, her name is Raven. Yes, I did have a giggle over it. Yes, her hair is dark. Anyway, so overall, I really, really enjoyed it. I ate it up over the course of two sittings, which is part of why I didn't end up doing the theories and reveal recording like I did for the last arc. I was just too involved. I was too engrossed in it. Viola's writing style is very easy to consume, like gobble that up super. You're not tripping over, ridiculous, fantastical names. You're not getting confused about, how does this person know that person, or what's the connection. It is a cast sort of story. However, you are primarily focusing, obviously, because it is narrated by it as first person, Raven, but you also spend a decent amount of time with the other actors in this cast. The opening few chapters are woof. Like, you start with a bang. You are immediately brought into understanding the precariousness of Raven's position. Like, she has to find the razor's edge to then dance upon it. She is a companion to the princess, which not in a courtesan-y sense, but more in a literally, she is basically their toy. She's like her doll. The princess dresses her, the princess tells her who to talk to, the princess tells her how to act, and if Raven ever steps out of line or has an allergic reaction to something, she gets punished for it, and that's awful. So you were immediately introduced to this kind of dynamic that Raven is experiencing. I found that the king sort of paints the picture of a typical Tudor king, at least in his aesthetics, and in the stereotypical a man that is basically ruled by his anger sort of thing. But you are immediately aware that the prince and the princess are both very dangerous, but you're unsure who you can trust at this point. Obviously, it's very early on. It is not too long, though, that you learn that you really can't trust any of the royals. You certainly can't trust the king. The prince is immediately introduced as being super sadistic. I think I wrote, let me see what my notes had said. The prince seems fucking psychotic. At the end of chapter 1 was my note. There are the seeds of foreshadowing. It's not even the seed. There is some foreshadowing very early on. And so if you're paying attention, you will notice and be like, I wonder, I bet. I don't want to like spoil anything because like I said, I really enjoyed it. You're pretty much immediately like, yeah, I bet that she has some kind of magical power. Or she just suffers from really, really bad anxiety.
A little from column A, a little from column B.
There's various descriptions throughout the first chunk of the book where you're discussing this sensation that she has in her chest. It feels like it's both squeezing and like putting a lot of pressure on her. It's like warm, but in an uncomfortable way. Like she's not very well able to breathe, and it only really happens whenever she's having like an elevated emotional moment. Or when she's unsure of like her safety, emotional or otherwise. And so that does sound and feel very much like having a really bad anxiety attack. So that is something, but you're pretty early on. You're just like, I bet that means something more. And I don't feel like it's too much of a spoiler based on the description to say, yes, in fact, it is something more. There is also early on in the book a sexual assault. It is not like to completion or anything, but it is definitely assault, and it is pretty jarring and disturbing. If you are a person who has experienced that, just being or are particularly sensitive to that, just that's your pre-warning here. You will see this happen a few times throughout the book. She wasn't kidding when she called it a tramantasy. Like I said, it's not enough of it. It's not like the point, it's just to show the kind of awfulness that Raven has experienced in this environment, and it's to like explain how terrible this environment. Speaking of this environment, as mentioned in the description, it's got a very strict social hierarchy. So you've got the royals, and also everybody's color coded, which is fun. It sounds like was it called the sumptuary laws? If you were of a certain class, so say like upper middle, you could only have so many buttons on your coat. And those buttons could only be made of a certain, like a handful of options of materials. Anybody who is in a lower station than you cannot access those materials, and I think has to have fewer buttons. And then the higher they are, the better the materials they have access to. It's kind of the vibes that you're getting from this sort of color-coded hierarchy. So you got at the very top, you got your royals, they're purple, surprise. Next you have the Fascals are in white. Then you've got the Varnery, which is the class that Raven is a part of. They are blue. And then you have the Orsos, who are red, the Shen, who are green, and then the Grodin, who are brown. Additionally, there is magic in this universe, obviously, and the magic seems to be associated with specific classes of people within this hierarchy. So the royalty is lightning, which makes sense if you've seen lightning. It's always purpley. And then you've got the Fascals, who are wind, and then the Varnery, which are water, blue, water. You've got the Orsos, the red, fire, unsurprisingly, Shen, green, earth, and then the Grodins have no powers. They at one point had powers, but in their, at the end of an uprising that had happened 400 years in the past, they were essentially cursed to not have manifest powers anymore. And they are basically just one very bitty step above slave in terms of what they do. And each of these classes have specific roles that they fit. The Varneries tend to be landed, and like our lords and ladies, dames, that sort of level. The Orsos are also typically landed, but in a lesser degree. Those are your guards, your artisans, stuff like that. Shen are typically put into like servile roles, or they work the land. And then the Grodens do absolutely everything else. Anything that is like unclean or like difficult or dangerous, that's when you send in you. That's when the social setup sends in the Grodens to do that. They're the ones who like work the mines and stuff. And it's extremely, extremely rigidly adhered to. So there's a scene pretty early on where Raven is pressured to wear a dress that is such a light shade of blue that it is practically white. And that is basically seen as blasphemous, because it is as though she is trying, even though she isn't, as though she is trying to like present herself as a Fastgul, which is the only, those are like just a half step above a Varnery, but obviously everybody's below the Royals. And that is like, because it's breaking from the hierarchy, and the hierarchy itself was like ordained essentially, it is like the basis of their religion, it was created, then that's trying to like pass herself off as something that she's not, and that is itself blasphemous. That is its own like thing, and that continues on throughout. And there's the crows is this like, they're like outside of the hierarchy basically, and it's not like a big organized group or anything, it's pretty small, but they dress up pretty regularly to fit in where they need to live, to survive, basically. So like, they need to look like a Shen, they'll go put on a green dress, because everybody is so brainwashed to expect that they're going to fit into this hierarchy and they're going to follow the rules of this society, that it's unfathomable that somebody would present themselves as something that they're not. And therefore that's a pretty clever way to sort of use that against itself. I have lots and lots of notes, but I don't want to go into too many. I do have some theories that I had come up with as I was reading. One of my theories that I'd written down was that I thought maybe Raven might be like the bastard child of the king. The setup, the position that she has is very weird. Another one that I had, I don't know why, but I like misguessed who the love interest would end up being. Especially like reading the description, I should have known. But maybe some of you will also bite off on the wrong lead that happens also pretty early on at the ball. I'm not going to say who it is because I want you to experience it. But also, if you've seen any of the fan art, like, you know, not the fan art, but like the official art that Viola has been putting out on her Instagram, like, you'll be like, oh, that's that description. That's who that is. But what I guess they even say. Do they say in the description? Yes, they do. It's Reggie. I was wrong. When I was reading, I did not read the description before I did. I did read all the tropes. That was what got me in. It was an Instagram reel that was like, do you like these tropes? And I was like, yes, I do. And I'm glad that I did. There's a couple of really heartbreaking moments. One of the ones that I had annotated as like, oh my God, heartbreak, was in chapter 31. This is roughly around the time that you're starting to see the Chosen One trope like really show its face, and then something happens, and it's particularly devastating, especially if you were like just sucked in like I was. And then one of my lesser favorite tropes shows its face in chapter 36, but it gets pretty quickly resolved. And that was fine. Chapter 42, my entire note was, that was cute. So, all right. Moving away from that, talking about my review, what I wrote whenever I read it. So, like I had mentioned before, I didn't feel like the enemies to lovers was, like that trope was particularly well met in this one. However, in its stead, there is a nice little slow burn that I appreciated. It felt, I don't know, I was giggly about it, which I think, you know, is usually a good sign. I put 2 exclamation points. Still a great slow burn, though. There is like one scene that I didn't super vibe with. It felt a little bit shoehorned in like in case this isn't obvious to you, reader, here's something for you. But like, that's okay. Ultimately, it's fine. There's a lot of pining, which I love. when I read something. I thought the pacing was a lot of fun. So that's one thing that I've noticed in the other reviews that I read after I posted my review is some people have differing opinions on the pacing. Some people feel like it's too fast for their tastes, and some people alternatively thought that it was too slow. I don't think if it went any faster, I wouldn't have liked it, but I thought it was just the right level of momentum. Like I said, you sort of hit the ground running, and it doesn't really, there's like a few breaths that happen, but it doesn't super slow down. You're getting like montage style training stuff, very small little snippets of stuff. You know that time is passing because they make comments about it, but I thought, I don't know, I was very engaged, and I think a lot of that had to do with the pacing. And because she did engineer a couple of like good little moments, like I'm 99% sure that my comment about the one chapter where my only thing was that was cute was because that was like a little breath. That was like okay, here's like 6 pages to just breathe. Okay, next step. Because it was right at the cusp of like the next beat in the story too, which I thought was fine. Some stuff that one thing that I really appreciated about this book is that Nichols like grapples with some really heavy subjects. Like I've already mentioned, there is sexual assault and trauma. There's intolerance, there's emotional abuse, there's physical abuse. And I think the most interesting and the most like obvious is religious indoctrination, and not question like how that when something is shown to you to be other than how you had been raised, the reaction that a person has is more indicative of who they are as a person. However, over time they may eventually realize or change their mind or like start to broaden their understanding of the world outside of just these very rigid lines, which is how this whole society is exclusively able to exist because everybody is basically indoctrinated and like practically brainwashed into this one way of thinking, religious or otherwise, even if you are yourself not terribly practicing. Like Raven is not like overly devout or anything, but this is the world that she lived in and understood, and to have everything that she has known about her society and about her like history be shaken over and over and over again was difficult for her to like come to terms with, which is totally valid and normal. But the level of how much that can permeate every way that you interact with other people and the world, it's just a very interesting conversation. And this is a conversation that is held throughout the entire book, which I liked how she handled it. I thought it was really great. One of the tropes that's not mentioned in the little like visual things that are on the Instagram, am I old? That are on Instagram about this book that isn't mentioned is the found family trope, which is very real and present in this one. I really loved it, and it felt, it was like a little bit cheesy, but it was also just really cute, and it felt genuine. Like by the end, you're like, yeah, okay, they like really love each other, which was super sweet. And then the last thing that I want to talk about, just really, I'm trying to keep this one short. I'm sorry, guys. The last thing is the characters themselves. They are, each of them, very flawed, but not in a way that's like super annoying. You're not overly frustrated. You are frustrated. You're not overly frustrated at their flaws, because it just makes them into like more human. The gray morals thing is one of the tropes that she had mentioned, and I think that one does fit, morally gray. And everybody's motivations are varied for why they're doing what they're doing and like living the way that they are and whatever. And I like that we get to explore that with some of the characters. And while I felt that they were a little bit surface level for some of the side characters, I understand that this is supposed to be a series. I don't know how many books are intended to be in the series, but I believe that further on we will get more of these backstories. You get a little bit of a taste of the other ones, which endears you a little bit more to each of the characters. Like, you obviously are getting all of Raven's backstory and you're getting little bits and pieces of the love interest's backstory, but he's pretty secretive. And so are the rest of the people in this cast. And so it tends to come out in little bits and pieces. Oscar's backstory is particularly heartbreaking. And I'm glad that she included it. But, you know, and I hope we get more, you know, of that. I expect we will. The ending is a nice little cliffhanger. I know that that's not everybody's cup of tea. I don't think that this is a book that I would be satisfied with if it was a standalone novel because of the way the ending was. It's obviously very open, but it's very much setting itself up for book 2. And knowing that it is part of a series, I will forgive that it is a cliffhanger. And in fact, it got me like kind of grumbly about the fact that we're not going to get a book 2 until at the earliest sometime next year, or longer. Obviously, like, the writing process and the editing process takes time. I don't know exactly where she's at in the writing process. But dang it if I'm not a little impatient. I really liked this one. I gave it, I don't know, I ate it up. But yeah, so I'm going to wrap this up the same way that I wrapped up my written review. If you want something that is action-packed but thoughtful with characters that you'll love to hate and hate to love, this is the book for you. I really enjoyed it. I gave it a 4.75. I had very minor nitpicks. I thought it was a lot of fun, and I think if it sounds like something you're interested in, my understanding is it's going to be on Kindle Unlimited whenever it gets released, in addition to like standard normal publishing, which comes out on the 17th of March. This might go up after it has been already published, and if it does, then go get it if you're interested. Okay, so thank you all for joining. I hope you guys had fun. I certainly did. I really enjoyed being able to read this. I'm just so glad that I found that like section of the internet that allows me to go and sign up to be an ARC reader. I know that each author has different requirements whenever they do that. Some people just give it to anybody who asks. Some authors will decide to do like a lottery. Some authors will decide to handpick based on like whatever form you fill out or whatever. I don't know which one of these specifically Viola Nichols had employed, so I'm just thankful that I got to. One thing I do want to mention is that yes, this is an ARC. However, I was not obligated to write a review. Whenever I got the little acceptance thing, it said please consider. It did not say in return for. I know that it is implied, but I don't think that I'll be doing a video for every single ARC that I read. I think I'll only be doing them for ones that I enjoyed, and I particularly enjoyed this one. Like I said, I gave it a 4.75. It's practically a 5. Only a couple of nitpicks, whatever. But yeah, so if you like this kind of content, don't forget to like and subscribe. If you would like me to read a specific kind of like specific book or a specific genre of book, please feel free to leave that as a suggestion in the comments below. I love to talk about books, so if you are also a person who got to read this book and you want to share your thoughts, please feel free to. If you're seeing this after it's been published and you've read the book and you have thoughts that either are the same or different than mine, please feel free to comment about that too. I just want to chit chat. I love talking about books. I love it. I really appreciate all of you guys, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye. But yeah. Ever since it was pointed out to me that I say but yeah all the time, I'm super hyper aware of it. I still do it, obviously. Anyway, and the secret that could unravel the world